Welcome back to the Let's Talk Social Innovation Pod, everybody. I hope you've been having a great start to your week, but if not, we can kickstart it right here. I'm your host, Ian Kahende, and this week I have a pretty cool person with me, Chloe Simpson.
Hello, hello.
What's up?
What's up? How are you?
We're chilling,
Yep.
we're chilling. So, you have a documentary
I do.
coming out.
I do.
The Scene Will Never Die.
Mm-hmm.
We will definitely jump into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But as we always do with this show, let's get up with your upbringing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
take me from the beginning.
All right, cool. So I am from Towson, Maryland, which is like a little kind of a university town. It's outside of Baltimore. And I've basically lived there my whole life, grew up there. My family and everything are there. And yeah, so I went to the local public schools in the area. Then I went to a all girls private Catholic high school, which was interesting. But I feel like in high school I've always loved like art and like film and stuff. And like even like as a kid I would make like me and my brother would like film like little movies. Like we'd write a script for like a little movie and then we'd film it. We did one, it was called Businessman and Businesswoman, and like businessman's twin was like stuck on an island which was in our backyard and we had to like go rescue him. So I've always been filming, and I used to like write little stories too, and I would like come into my like third grade class and be like, hey guys, I wrote a like picture book, and I would write a story about like a little character going on an adventure or something. So I've always loved that creative stuff. And then I feel like as I started growing up and like like social norms and stuff started to impact me, I kind of lost that creative touch a little bit because I was so focused on these are like I gotta interact with people and gotta like be cool or whatever. And then so I feel like it's like I was into it in high school too. Like I did a lot of portrait photography, and during COVID I worked on this like zine, which is like an online magazine basically. And so I'd publish like different, like I would like feature like photographers and like artists and that kind of stuff. And we did like a virtual like Zoom concert during the pandemic too. And I had like a staff, like a bunch of like people I met basically through Instagram, who were all writers on the zine, which is called Etc. magazine. I don't think it's really up anymore, but I have to go find it.
I mean, it sounds cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun. And so we had a virtual concert during the pandemic, which was really fun. We just had like different bands from kind of all over the world. Like there's one from like Australia, one from like Europe, and like different places in the US. And they just played, and people could like buy like a little ticket, and you could go and like watch the virtual concert, which is really nice because especially feel like during the pandemic people were missing like that live music and being able to experience and everything, and bands were missing playing, so it was nice to give them that platform. And so yeah, I did a lot of that and stuff in high school, and then I feel like I came to college, I kind of lost that a little bit because again I was like focused on like
There's just so many external
there's a
factors.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on, especially when you're entering like your freshman year, like going to, because I came to Pittsburgh. I'm it's a completely new place with my
Stuck in
parents
Holland.
and everything. Yeah, Holland Hall, floor 4, shout out. But it was yeah, I kind of lost that a little bit, but I feel like now I'm more established. I'm like I got through all the of like freshman and sophomore year basically, and I'm a junior now at Pitt. And I feel like since I'm more established and since I got this fellowship for the documentary, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can finally get back into doing my art basically, and doing like my creative work, which is really my passion. Yeah. And I even like changed my major. It was politics philosophy coming in, and which was cool, but like I was like, I need something that's more hands-on, more like direct. So now I'm doing film and media and urban studies, and which I both like a lot, and I feel like a lot of them, they kind of like coexist, film media and then urban studies.
Tell me about that overlap.
Yeah. So when I was originally going to do this project, I wanted to do urban change in Pittsburgh. And so I wanted to like talk about like how the areas change over time, because there's a lot, especially in Oakland, there's like a lot of like gentrification and stuff with the university. And so I wanted to do originally a documentary on that, because I feel like a documentary is such a good format to like to spread like that message and that kind of stuff. And I changed my idea, but I feel like even though I changed my idea to Pittsburgh music history, which is what my documentary is on, the urban studies aspect still impacted it a lot, because I talked about jazz in the Hill District, which went up until I think it was like the 30s through like the 60s, early 60s, late 50s, and urban change impacted that a lot, because there was in the Hill District there was like this whole like city movement where they were like, okay, let's tear down all these buildings and like build completely new ones. And so that's what they did. Like they were like, okay, this area is, they saw it as like an area that was struggling, even though it wasn't, because it was like a predominantly like minority area, and it was a huge like Black jazz community there, and so that was like a really important place because it was a place that they could all be and they could all play music together, and like it was kind of like a sanctuary where they had that space where they didn't feel as like impacted by like the racism and everything else that was going on at that time. And so then the urban renewal kind of destroyed that because these people
safe
come
space
in.
is gone.
Yeah, they come in, they take down, they destroy all these buildings. A lot of the music clubs and stuff were gone, and they like kind of break up the community by adding all these new places. So it's interesting to see how like the urban change and everything will kind of influence just like the culture and art and all that kind of stuff. So it all kind of connects. But
Right.
yeah, I guess that I kind of like brought it back to my documentary. But yeah, that was my little upbringing spiel.
So you said that you were always like making like docs and like making like
Mhm.
films and stuff, but where did that come from is my question.
I think it's because my parents had a video camera, and my parents also, or my mom always showed us. We would always watch old movies as like little kids. We would always be like watching old movies because that's what she watches, Turner Classic Movies. And so she would always be like, "Come watch this with us." So I just saw a lot of film, and I saw a lot of media growing up, which I'm extremely grateful for because I feel like it's so important to see that because that is kind of like history preserved. Like that, those like old movies were like, yes, this was like literally the people from that time and like the art from that time that they were doing. So it's so important to view that and everything. And I feel like watching those movies kind of inspired me, and watching modern movies too. Like it wasn't all just old movies. And we had like my parents showed me my brother Gilligan's Island when we were growing up, and so we watched that, and then me and my brother had Legos. So we like recreated Gilligan's Island and like filmed it. Like we found the script online and we like filmed it and like recreated it with all the like Lego Gilligan
You
and
do
like
that like stop
all the
motion?
characters. No, I think we just kind of like moved them around and it was like Skipper, like we like, moved around. They were just like talking and stuff. But just like having that was so good, and I think it's also in part because we didn't have like iPads, like I feel like we had
Not an
that
iPad
not until
kid.
later. Yeah, not an iPad kid, which I feel like really helped because having that like physical like tactile ability to play and be creative outside of like an app is really important. So I'm grateful to my parents for that.
So how would you say that the pandemic impacted your relationship with art and everything that was going around with the scene?
I feel like the pandemic kind of allowed me to explore it more and to kind of come into myself more because I feel like when I was at school, I was like caught up in the school and I was caught up in like the people, and it was like a lot of like conformity and stuff was going on because we had uniforms and stuff and a lot of like tradition based things, and I'm grateful for the school I went to. I feel like I got a good education there, but I feel like having time at home and having time to myself just to like be in my room and like, okay, what am I doing today? I was able to be more creative because I had that time to be creative, and like we were all stuck at home, so we all had more time to do that. And I feel like in the world where when you're so busy, it's like you have to you have to
Slow
work, you have to
down.
go to school and everything. It's like you have to have that time to be creative because that for a lot of people that's like an outlet, and like I feel like for me that was an outlet, and it was really nice to have that. And I hope for the future we can take that into account and like remember like how nice it was, even though we were all kind of it was definitely isolated, but like how nice it was just to have that time to like kind of relax and to kind of like get like do all the things that you wish you could have done when you like had time, like that kind of stuff.
So moving forward in like the whole life timeline and
Mhm.
everything, this doc coming out,
Mhm.
The Scene Will Never Die.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Okay. So I applied for a creative arts fellowship through the University of Pittsburgh. And I didn't even like know about it, and it was kind of like a last minute thing. Like my parents were like, "Oh, like look at this." They said my mom sent me the link for this. So shout out to my mom for sending me the link. And so like I did that, and I was like, "Oh, like whatever. Like I'll apply. Like it could be cool because there's like a stipend, and I could stay here in the summer because they would pay me to work on this." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do like a documentary about urban change and like small businesses in Pittsburgh. Maybe I'll like interview some of the local small businesses." And so I applied, and then I heard back, and I heard that I got it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy!" First of all, and second of all, I have to actually do this now,
Oh
which is
wow.
also crazy. Yeah, yeah. And so like during the spring, we like thought about it a little bit. We had a couple like little meetings with the creative fellowship group, and I was like, okay, but I was like also doing classes, and we weren't really like starting to work on it yet. So I really started in May when like summer started basically. And then so when summer was starting, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I kind of don't feel excited or like super passionate about this idea that I have right now. And I know I want to do documentary. And luckily the fellowship's flexible enough that I can change kind of the theme of it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I've like experienced some of the music scene just in Oakland, like going to house shows and stuff. And I've always thought it was really fun. And I was like, I've heard a little bit about jazz in Pittsburgh, and I was wondering if there is more to it, and then there's more to the music history. And like without even doing that much research, I was like, there definitely is. And I was like, I'm gonna do Pittsburgh music history, and I'm just gonna see what I can find, you know. And so I basically I did that, and I like was like, okay, who am I gonna talk to? So I had to find people to reach out to and everything. And luckily I did have some connections because I have a friend who like has been playing in Pittsburgh music scene for a while. So I found a lot through him, but a lot of them were just like,
Are you gonna shout out the friend?
oh yeah, Eli Alfieri of Wild Blue Yonder. Yeah, he's actually working with me on the space for the documentary premiere.
Word.
So yeah. So it's been fun. But like yeah, I had to reach out and had to just email people and like be like, all right, will you be my documentary? And that part was a little scary. It was scary to start because like I've never done a documentary before. I've worked with some film. I've done some like short films for my classes and whatever, but I've never like done a documentary. And then so like it was super daunting too because I was like, okay, I don't have like it's not like a 9 to 5, you know. Like I was just at my sublet in the summer, and it was just me, and I was like, okay, be in the library where I could get all my equipment, and I was like in my laptop, and I was like, okay, so I have to do this, and I have to like schedule myself, which is a really kind of a hard thing to do because like whenever I'm not doing something, I feel like I'm like wasting my time, you know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be working on it right now. But I had to kind of learn to be like, okay, so this is the time I'm gonna do work. After I've done these couple things, I can like chill, you know. So I'm glad it kind of worked out, and it's crazy to create a final product. Like I haven't like it's like a 40-minute, it's like 35 minutes now, and like watching it through, it's like all the work that went into that, like months and months of like reaching out and scheduling interviews and like setting up the camera and filming and like going home and everything. And it's just like it's crazy to see it realized, and it's crazy to see it as like a final product. And the first time I watched I like finished editing, I added another interview like recently, so it wasn't like what it is right now,
still work in progress.
Yeah, the first time I finished like editing and I watched all the way through, I literally like, first of all, the ending made me cry because I did a good job with that. It's like,
is it gonna make me cry?
Yeah. And but like second of all, I literally like I had to like go, I lay down on the floor and just like sobbed because I don't like, it was just some sort of release. Like it doesn't make me cry now. Just like seeing that created was just like I don't even know how to put it into words because it was like, wow, like I did that and now it's here and it's real and it's not that bad, so it kind of worked out. Yeah.
So let's say hypothetically, I knew nothing about you. I knew nothing about what you're dropping. What would you tell me to get me interested?
Okay. I would say that Pittsburgh, people don't consider Pittsburgh to be a place that music has really like thrived, I guess. Like you don't really think of Pittsburgh when you think of like music, but like there is a deep, rich history here that a lot of people don't know about. And there's so many of these venues that used to exist that closed down, and people walk by them every day with no idea
of like what was there.
Yeah, like U2, Stevie Ray Vaughan, like these people. The Police played at the corner of Atwood and Senate in Oakland, and the building is still there. And there's like a little plaque on the side. It was called the Decade, this venue, and it was huge. It was like from like the 70s to like the 90s, and like all these bands played, like the Iron City House Rockers. I talked to Joe Grusecki of the Iron City House Rockers. They played there like every single week, and this was huge. And it was during like this, like steel workers would like come here after like a long hard day in the steel mill. So like music was such an important thing to have because it gave people a chance to kind of like be together to kind of unleash, because they went crazy back then too. Like they were just like out on the streets going crazy. But like that building is still there, and like people will walk by it like every single day. Like, and just most people don't know. Like most people are like my age, like don't have any idea what that was. And I think it's so important to like recognize that, because our history kind of shapes, the present. And like having a venue in Oakland like that, we don't really have one right now. So it just shows you how powerful it could be. Yeah.
I very much look forward to, I guess, now knowing what used to be there after I see this, the scene will never die.
Yeah,
of
no,
course,
dude, it's crazy.
obviously.
I got some footage from inside. I got all these fantastic photos that were sent to me by Gabby Means, who is like the granddaughter of the guy Dominic DeSilvio, who owns the Decade. So I did this. This was awesome. I did this post on Facebook, and I was like, "Hey, I'm currently working on this documentary." So there's like a Facebook group called like the Decade Quarter of Rock and Roll on Facebook, and it's all these people who like went to the Decade and the older people that enjoyed the Decade, and so they have like a little Facebook group. And I posted in it, and I was like, "Hey, like, I'm working on this documentary. I want any photos you have or anything about the Decade. I want to talk about the Decade in my documentary." And I got like 60 responses of people being like, "Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I love the Decade. Like, here's this photo of these people." Sorry.
That's good. I got it.
Here's John Bon Jovi, like, at the Decade. Here's Stevie Ray Vaughan at the Decade with all these people. And like you can find like this member of like the Police who's like wearing like a Decade t-shirt in this video. And so it was really cool to see that. And people were like, "I don't have anything to add, but please let me know about the documentary when you were done." And then people were like, "I'm really glad you're telling this story because it's such a big time for people, and there's a lot of nostalgia there. There's like a lot of power there." So I think it was really nice to make that post, and nice to see that people were like happy to talk about it.
Yeah, that sense of community is big online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, when it came to getting this documentary all finished and put together, what were some of the biggest challenges?
I think just like definitely, I think just starting anything is really hard. Like starting the documentary was hard. Starting the editing process was really hard because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have all this footage." Like I did this. I was we have a place in North Carolina, so I was like there. I was at the I was just like, okay, this is gonna be my editing week. This was like the last week of summer, and I was with my family. And I was like, okay, like it's time to start editing, and like I actually have time now because I'm like home. I can I can kind of like chill. So I think starting editing was hard because it was just I have all these like footage, all these interviews, all these B-roll, and I'm like, okay, how do I create a narrative that's cohesive from this? And so one thing I figured out about was Otter AI, which will like take all the audio you have and it'll like make a transcript out of it, which is really nice because then you can see all the words kind of written out. So I just plugged everything into Otter AI. My free trial version, so I like made like different emails with different accounts.
We saving money. We don't got much to go around.
That's what I'm saying. And so I did that, and it was like I was like, okay, so I can start finding like things that connect. Like I was looking at everybody's transcript, and I was like, okay, so this is like he was talking about this thing, and like he was talking about this thing, and I could kind of like add that and like interweave that in, and then I kind of ended up restructuring it a little bit since then, but like having that base was so helpful because I'm like, okay. And it was also hard to like decide what to keep and what to leave in because these interviews can be like, like 30 minutes long.
And then, you said this whole thing's gonna be like 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's gonna be like 35 minutes. Yeah, so you really have to like, it's hard to cut stuff out because you want to include everything. You know what I mean? Like you want to include their whole origin story and how did they got to be where they are. But I'd be like, okay, so I'm focusing on Pittsburgh. Maybe I'll send her some stuff. Like I'll just find all the stuff on Pittsburgh that I can send her, and maybe like create kind of some sort of cohesive story out of this. So I was luckily able to do that. And and something thanks to Otter AI, I got a shout out. But that was so I was able to do that. And
So through making this, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned?
Okay. I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to follow the flow. Like when you're telling a story like this, people are going to say things that you don't expect, and people are going to lead new avenues of thought. And like you have to be able to allow your vision to change to fit that. Because if you have a very structured vision and for like a documentary or like a project or something, and like people say things that kind of change that, you have to allow that to happen and like kind of allow the flow. I mean, like even like the interview I did just like this past weekend for the documentary, which is this weekend, which is like really crazy because it was really last minute. But I interviewed Liz Berlin of Mr. Smalls, and she had some really new perspectives that I hadn't thought about before. Like she had this whole perspective about like the pandemic and how that influenced artists and venues and things, and like how that kind of took a chunk out of the trajectory of like artists playing in Pittsburgh because there was like you start at like Club Cafe and you end at like the Roxy, and like there's different venues, but like having the pandemic took a chunk out of the middle, and I had just never thought about that before. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is a completely new perspective. And she also had some really great perspective about being a woman in the music industry, because up to that point there were no women in my documentary. And I was like, it was harder to find women, obviously, because I feel like men have definitely been given a bigger platform to share their music and everything, just like forever. So it was really great to kind of talk to her about that. And like she's been like a woman in the music industry for like 45 years. She said don't include that in documentary because it makes her sound old. But like that's so good, you know.
45
like,
years of torment.
yeah, really, yeah. No, she talked about that, and so it was really nice to have that perspective too. Also, as like a woman in any industry, I guess, was to hear that, and like some of her advice was so powerful. Like one of her things was how important it is to ask for help. And she says like you are worthy of asking for help, and you're worthy of getting the help you need, and like your time is important and that kind of stuff. So like hearing that from her was like, oh, like this is good advice, and this is stuff that I need to take too, especially entering like film is like maybe like a male dominated industry too. So entering that, it's like, okay, like I need to be able to like know that my time is worthy and create a space for myself. So she had a lot of wisdom. So it was nice to be able to put that into the documentary too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very important to have femme voices in media, because it's like you were saying, men have dominated the talking space for such a long time. Now, I guess the last thing that we're going to get into before our artist spotlight is, what advice would you want to pass on to anybody watching or listening to this?
I would say just like go for the things you want to go for, because if you don't go for stuff, you're not gonna do it. So like just apply for things, apply for grants, apply for fellowships like this one, apply to the Creative Arts Fellowship, and just see like see what you can do, because if you feel that passion for something, and if you have that talent, and you have that talent for something, like go after it, because in life, like why wouldn't you? I guess that's basically it. But yeah, just go for it.
So this is a good time to get into our artist spotlight for this week. This week we'll be playing the song Ground Control by Sunset Drive, and I hope you guys enjoy. That was this week's artist spotlight, Ground Control by Sunset Drive. You can find their music on every platform. The link will be in the description of this episode. But now it's time to get into our topic for this week, which is how the past influences the present. I will leave the floor open to you, Chloe.
Okay, awesome. So it's kind of a big topic, right? How the past influences the present. And it's so true. Because if you think about it, like a lot of my classes right now are about like urban studies. So it's kind of like talking about how our environment around us is something that was built, in the past. Like a lot of these houses in Oakland are like steel workers used to live here. You ever heard like the Pittsburgh toilet? They have like that one toilet.
As an
in the
engineer,
basement.
I feel you.
Yeah. So like we are constantly, I guess, surrounded by our past, and like a lot of the times we don't really think about it as much, because we're just kind of like going about our day to day, and we're like, oh, this and this. We don't realize how much it impacts us and how important it is too, because it's like almost essential to recognize the things that happened in the past when you're building a better future. Like it's important to recognize like, oh, these are things we went through, and like these are things that happened. Like in the documentary, one thing that Dr. Jonathan White, who's an assistant professor, or like associate teaching professor at Penn State, when he was talking about how like like jazz in the Hill District kind of like lost like prominence, and everything kind of like faded away a little bit, was in kind of in line with 1968, like after MLK died. And they had so I include in the documentary, I include this little like couple of photographs that were taken. There's like the National Day of Mourning a couple days after Martin Luther King had passed. And like people kind of like, these photos are really powerful because it's people taking to the streets, and people like kind of speaking out against so much like racial injustice that was happening at that time in our country, and how that kind of that affected the Hill District a lot, because that was it just kind of like people kind of like focused, like civil rights kind of took precedence in a lot of like this music and stuff, and also like a lot of different factors kind of into that too, like urban renewal and that kind of stuff. And like he also talked about how there was like Black musicians were used to improvising, and then a lot of the venues started to want like set lists ahead of time, and they started to want these songs, and then Black musicians couldn't really fit into that because they wanted to improvise, and that was like the kind of music they did. And since they lost their own venues, like the Crawford Grill was this in the Hill District on Wiley Avenue. It had like 3 floors, and like the 3rd floor was like a club, musicians club, and a lot of like local celebrities and athletes and stuff went there. Like Martin Luther King Jr. like went to the Crawford Grill, and
I would not be coming to the Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and he was on that 3rd floor. So it's just it was such a like essential space, I guess. And when they lost that, it was much harder to kind of fit into like a system that wasn't built for them. Yeah. And then the kind of the similar thing happened too with like rock and roll in like the 70s through the 90s. Like that also started, I talked to Joe Grusecki of the Iron City House Rockers, and that also started to kind of die down as the end of the steel industry happened, because they had all these people in Pittsburgh were like steel workers and families of steel workers and everything. And so they were like the main people that would come to this bar in Oakland, the Decade, and like not even just the Decade, but like all of the venues around. And so they were like the main group of people that would come. And so when the steel industry ended, they lost a lot of that. Like they lost all those people, and it's kind of a good thing the steel industry ended, because it's like all of like those the health effects and that kind of stuff. It was a hard job. It's
just
very
waking up
hard.
to smog.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. Johnny Angel, I talked to also for the documentary. He talked about like he used to live in the North Shore, I believe, and he like grew up there like 60s, and like sang, like he talked about how they sang doo-wop on the street corners, and they like had no instruments, just their voices, so they would just like stand on the street corners and sing doo-wop. But he talked about how like looking across, like I think the Monongahela, like looking across that was, you could barely see to the other side because there was so much smog. And he was talking about how you could only do your laundry and like hang up your clothes to dry on Sundays because the steel mills weren't working. And if you hung it up on any other day, they'd be covered in like soot. So it was definitely a crazy time. And yeah, just like seeing that is so, it's like, wow, like this is our history, and like it impacted the music industry in a lot of ways, and it was really interesting to see that.
So in the past here in Pittsburgh, how did music directly impact society?
In the past here in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say it definitely, like, it just provided a space for people to be social, and it provided kind of, like, when music thrived here, it was when it had like a space to thrive. Like it's when it had a venue or a place that people could go like every week, because people have there's a lot of stress in the world. There's a lot of hard days. There's a lot of long and hard days. No matter what you're doing, if it's like the steel mill industry, or if you're like a college student now, like you want to kind of release. You want to be with other people. You want to dance. You want to like move. You want to have fun. And like, so it's so important to have those spaces, because like the Musicians Club, Crawford Grill was that space, and music thrived there. Like you had like the like jazz in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was kind of the crossroads between Chicago and New York. So like people like, and like artists like Duke Ellington would like travel through and stop by in Pittsburgh while they were going from like New York to Chicago. And so it kind of provided a space, and it took like the sophistication of like the Eastern musicians and kind of like the jazz like funk of Chicago, and it combined that, And in one of the audios I was listening to, it called it a kind of sophisticated funk. So that's like a segment of my documentary is sophisticated funk, because that Pittsburgh sound was something unique because it was kind of a mesh of different things. So that also shows you how like interacting with different places kind of builds that. But yeah, and then also like the decade that was a place for music to thrive as well. And I was talking to Liz Berlin was like the most recent interview I did, and she talked about her band Rusted Root was like huge, nationally known. She got her start in Pittsburgh, and she met like her drummer and her bassist at the University of Pittsburgh, like in the music building. And she talked about how they were like handing out like demo tracks, and I think this was like the 80s or 90s. And so like having like that space or like musicians in the music building was also a space where she could meet other people. And she talked about like the venues she started off at. They started playing at like this Beehive coffee shop, and like from there, and then it kind of like they went to like the Birmingham Lofts, which is like an artist like loft space, and they would just bring their own sound system and they would set up music and stuff there. And how that kind of trajectory led them to the Graffiti, which is like a bigger venue in Oakland. Which actually I was reading about the Graffiti, and it said that like Nirvana like was like little known at the time when they played in 1991 at the Graffiti, and they had like some disagreement with like the promoter about like the money they were making, and they set the dressing room with the Graffiti on fire.
That's so
Yeah,
crazy.
I know. So it's just like there's so much here. There's so much like history and music in Pittsburgh, and like there's so many people that I wanted to talk to for the documentary that I didn't get a chance to. And like people, like every time I would do an interview with someone, like one of my last questions would be like, who else should I talk to? And then they would give me like a list of like 4 people to talk to, like 4 different contact information of like people in Pittsburgh. So like I really want to continue this project because I feel like I'm not done telling this story. Like I'm not, and I think a lot of other people have also been telling the story. Like I saw there was a big jazz documentary that came out recently about Pittsburgh, and I need to watch it. But like there's so much here, and I really want to continue like diving into that because I feel like there's a lot of other people who witnessed this history, and like you have to get them before they pass. Like Dr. White, which sounds kind of morbid, but it's so important to tell those stories. But like Dr. White, he spent a lot of time with like the jazz musicians, like the people who were like the sidemen in the band. So they would play like the backup instruments and everything. But a lot of them like lived their whole lives in Pittsburgh, like in the Hill District and that kind of stuff. And so he like when he wrote his dissertation, he wrote it about collective memory, which is basically like how people remember the past kind of, and like the nostalgia for the past. Like he would interview and he would talk. He spent like a year with these people, and they would take him to like places where clubs used to be, and they would remember the club but not exactly where it was. Like they would be like, oh, like this club was over here, and then in reality you like check the records and it was a different place. But he talks about how like that was it's just that collective memory is the nostalgia is kind of, and the way people remember it may not be essentially exactly accurate, but like it's just the feeling is like so important to have, like just like remembering that and like telling that story and spending time with those people. And he said too, he said something I really liked. He said he's just like a scribe. Like he has no, like he did not really put himself in the dissertation at all, but he has to kind of function as kind of like just
the medium.
Yeah, as the medium to tell these stories, and that's what I hope to be as well. Like I mean, I'm not even from Pittsburgh. Like I don't, I'm completely new to this. I'm completely new to this music scene. And that's something I put in mind when I went to this documentary, was that I'm here just to learn. Like I'm here to hear your voice. I'm here to like hear everything that these people have to say, because they have a lot. They have a lot to say, and even like I talked to younger people too, and they also have a lot to say. I talked to people. I went to the show at Club Cafe because Eli was playing there, and he was like, "Yeah, come like film some interviews." So I filmed a lot of interviews for like the last final part of my documentary there, and it was so nice to see people be so passionate. And a lot of things I heard about Pittsburgh was how welcoming it was. Like this is a music scene that like a lot of music scenes in cities are very like exclusive. Like it's very hard, and people are in competition, so they're gonna not be as receptive to new people coming in. They're gonna be like, nope, like this is our scene. You can't enter.
When you're saying exclusive, do you mean for the listeners or for the artists?
For the artists, yeah. Like it's hard to kind of build yourself up as like a new like musician in other cities. But in Pittsburgh, it's different because I think people, it's like smaller here, like it's a smaller city. So people are more welcoming to have others in, and this is not just a new thing too. Like even like Dr. White talked about how the jazz scene. Then a lot of jazz scenes are very exclusive. Like a lot of jazz scenes are obviously it's like only if you're like blah 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 this guy. But like he talked about here, like even then it was welcoming. It was welcoming to anyone who wanted to play, to learn, because they had that space to do so. Yeah.
So you probably listed off like half a dozen venues already, just like talking through this. But nowadays, we don't really hear much about anything going on.
There's
why?
Yeah, well, I don't know, because there are some good ones. There are some good ones now. There's Mr. Roboto Project, who I tried to interview, but I didn't end up working out. But I met with John from Mr. Roboto Project. And there's Bottle Rocket, which is a great venue. I think it's at the Southside Slopes, and they have shows every single night of the month. Like they'll have shows, they'll book shows, and it'll be like comedy. They have like different like bands come. They have like DJ sets. They have they had this like Mario Kart night, and they had like people come in, the live band play like Mario Kart theme song.
I saw something
people,
about that online.
Yeah,
that
people
was
would
funny.
compete. Me and my friend Ethan were trying to go, but we both had night class that night, so we couldn't go. But there's places like those that kind of are doing their like DIY unique scene, but we definitely don't hear as much as we could, especially in Oakland, because there isn't a venue like that. And my friend Eli is trying to buy. They're like working together, trying to get. There's a church on Atwood Street, and it's just like empty church. It's been up for lease since like 2020. And so they're trying to get that venue, and hopefully like that'll work out, because like, you'd have like music shows inside that church, and like that will be, because that's what Mr. Smalls is. Mr. Smalls is a church that they have they have music like different shows in there. Like I went when I interviewed this Berlin, she took me into Mr. Smalls, and there was like a punk show going on in the theater, and there was like local bands playing in the funhouse all at the same time. So it was so cool to see, because I was walking around in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really like getting to witness like all these people and all these different types of people enjoying music. And they also have like a cafe, so there's like also food and like drinks and like different like the merch section and everything, and like people outside and people inside, and like it was so cool to see that.
Driving.
Yeah. And I think that would be a great thing to have in Oakland as well, because especially there's nowhere to go in Oakland on like a weekend.
You can just drink. That's
all. It's not a bar. Exactly. Yeah, it's only bars. Like that's the only thing you could do. So if you're not 21 or if you don't drink, it's like, what do you do? You know, like there's no like bowling, there's no movie theater, there's like nothing else to do in Oakland. And that's why it would be so great to have a music venue here, because that would be somewhere. And if they had shows every single weekend, which they definitely could, because there are already shows like every single weekend. Yeah. Like every time I go on Instagram, it's like there's 8 different band flyers and for like 5 different events. Like there's like so much happening here, so they could definitely book shows there. And like having that to go to every weekend would create such a sense of community in like the pit area, because you would see the same people there. You'd make friends who are into like the band scene or into music, and that's such a beautiful thing to have. And like that's what we've had in the past, and it has been a beautiful thing. And I think that we should have that now, because
it's gotta come back.
Yeah, because it is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what post genre does. Because I know a lot of the guys there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know Black Lodge, which is like sort of connected. So just really cool seeing them trying to bring the band scene back to Pittsburgh. Yeah,
and the space they have with the Pittsburgh Innovation District, which is the 115 Atwood space, which is where it's kind of like an upstairs, like you could rent it out. It's called the Avenue, which is where I'm having my documentary premiere. They have that space now, and they had a show there on the 23rd of September, and it was awesome, because it was like, oh my gosh, this space. And like house shows have their own vibe. House shows are fun, but like it's often very crowded, it's sweaty, like the sound system's not great, there's so many people in there you can't really even hear the bands. They also have problems with like there's no regulation or anything, so like people can like weirdos and predators can just kind of wander around in there, and like drug use and everything, but like having a space that's like built the one on Avenue. Yeah. It's like the sound system is great. They have fantastic lights. It's like a beautiful scene there.
Vibe.
It's a completely different vibe. Yeah. And it's like, it was really nice to go to that, because I was like, oh wow, I can actually like hear the music and hear the bands. And they had this other show that was on Shenley Drive, Post Rondo Dead, and the Oakland Block Party, and it was so much fun. It was just like having that. They had they rented out like Shelby Drive, and they had a show there, and there was like a lot of space. There was like a guy walking around who just showed up with the bubble machine. I actually met him. He was really nice. He gave me like a haiku he wrote about bubbles. He was like, "Yeah, I got this at a wedding, and I was gonna throw it away, but like now I just walk around and I threw like have bubbles like going on the street because like everybody, most people love bubbles and like they bring joy to people. So a lot of the music is about bringing joy to people. Like that's something that like Byron Nash said at the end of the documentary. Is another person I interviewed. He just said, yeah, that's like at the end of the day, like that's all it is. It's like you want to like he plays a lot of music and he wants to like play music that'll bring people together and have people enjoy music collectively because it is such a powerful force. Like people talk about like there's like research into like how music can like impact your brain in different ways and stuff, and like it's so important to have that, and just like kind of art and stuff like that too.
So I guess to close this section off, what do we need to learn from the past of Oakland music?
I think we need to learn how. So I think about that for a second. I think it's so important to have community, I think, and that's what we can kind of look back at those years and like see how they had community and how that led to so much good in the world, because it can be a bit overwhelming, just all the stuff that's going on in our world right now. It's it could definitely be overwhelming, but like having a community and having friends and having people to be with and to experience things with it like nurtures your soul. Yeah, and I think that's kind of a lesson we can take, that is that we should be centering these people that are so talented, like these musicians. We should be centering them and just like talking about them and giving them a platform to share their art, because it's something that needs to be shared. It's something that can really bring people together as well.
So before we head off, is there anything else you want to get across about this documentary?
Nope, go watch it. The scene will never die.
No more spoilers?
Yeah. No more spoilers. Yeah, you're gonna have to go watch it. That's it.
All right, bet.
The scene will never die.com. I will be posting, there'll be a YouTube video, so I'll be posting like a little button that has a YouTube video on it.
Where's the sticker? The scene will never die.com.
Yes,
right
the sticker,
there.
yes. I also I like drew on one I put on my phone case. And you look around Oakland, I put up a lot of stickers, I put up a lot of flyers. That was really fun. I like that. I'll have some available at the premiere too. But
okay, bet.
Fun.
So you'll find the link to the scene will never die.com in the description everywhere that you're watching or listening. But last thing is got this for you. Feel free to open it later.
Okay.
But that's from my friend Dr. Toya Jones.
Oh my God.
Healing Overflow with Dr. Toya, available on every platform. Will also be linked in the description.
Oh wow, I love that.
But this is Ian Kahende signing off. Peace out, everybody.